I think the whole project kind of really struck me as being very important for personal reasons and for reasons for the wider disabled community.
I was interested in taking part in this project because I want to add my voice to the conversation around representation of disability.
I've got a million identities, one of which is my disability.
These prints are fascinating and they represent the total exceptions, the people, first of all, who were able to survive.
It is often taken for granted that disability is something visible. You can tell whether or not somebody is disabled by looking at them. Well, you can't tell that about me unless I'm having a fit.
In 2009, the RCP was awarded a grant from the Wellcome Trust People Awards for the project Reframing Disability. 27 disabled participants were recruited for the project. In July 2010, they came together over 3 days of focus groups facilitated by SHAPE, a disability-led arts organisation. Participants discussed the lives of the historical disabled people and compared and contrasted their portraits. They were also invited to have their own portraits taken and to be filmed. These recorded conversations and contemporary portraits formed the exhibition Reframing Disability 2011 to 2012.
My photograph is me taking a photo of the photographer. So it's me actually doing something rather than always being looked at as disabled people are.
Around 18% of the UK is self-defined as disabled, yet the television, for example, or the media only portray around 1 to 2% of that. And then when we do portray disabled people, it's usually in a very tokenistic sense.
And we don't get rung. I don't ever get rung up to play a normal role. I only ever get rung up to play the bloke in the wheelchair. You know, the deaf girl in Silence won't ever play just the normal girl. She'll always play the deaf girl in something. The portrayal of disability is starting to be wrapped up in this obsession about perfection that we have in our society, and disabled people, our voice should be trying to make people wake up to the fact that being perfect is not the answer.
There is a lot of controversy about non-disabled actors playing disabled characters, and I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing at all. But the other side of that argument is if we're saying non-disabled actors can't play disabled roles, and we then say that we can't play, those other characters.
Things are changing from sensationalism into more acceptance of people with disability and being able to be part of the normal life, the normal lifestyle and general society.
The practice in film and media has changed quite considerably, because now when you look at the popular soap operas, they actually use disabled people, which is a fantastic change from what it used to be before.
I want to see more people on TV with my disability to make me feel that I have got something to aspire to or a role model.
We have reporters who are sight impaired on the BBC. We've got the young lady on CBBC's presenting, she's physically impaired. There are more of this going on.
Living in our Western society, which is heavily dominated by the media and by television, I think that is one key tool that we need to use in order to change the perspectives towards disabled people.
I think there needs to be more disabled people behind the scenes. There needs to be more disabled producers, directors, writers. That will be the right kind of representation. There's no point in putting disabled people in front of the camera and not giving them the power to actually say what they want to say.
Regarding selling oneself or showing oneself, it's the element of choice that's important. I wouldn't do it myself now, but then I don't object particularly to publicity or indeed to being filmed as is happening now. And I am doing this as a disabled person, but that's because I think I have something to bring, not something to make. out of it.
Tracy Emin, I mean, she makes a living out of her mental health, really. You know, she washes her dirty linen in public.
A lot of the programmes and all the disability related stuff still focus on the disability rather than the person and who they are.
I think the examples of kind of current contemporary television body shock and so on, I think it's quite disgusting the extent to which people are not in control of the way that they're represented.
And there's something to gawp at, and not something to understand. And I think programmes like that are very, very much a retrograde step, because they're not about illuminating. They're an attempt for you to go, "God, blummy, who'd have thought, and well, I never."
The project examined historical portraits of disabled people from the RCP's museum collections, dating from the 17th to the 19th century. 1 oil portrait and 28 prints were selected. The RCP worked with 2 medical historians to uncover the lives of the disabled people portrayed in the artworks.
It was probably more normal in the 18th and 17th centuries to exhibit oneself in order to make money.
Although it's said that people displayed themselves, I think people who survived must have been even more hidden in the past, and these are the exceptions.
Interestingly, my group have just been talking about Blind Granny, which I think does relate to impairments today, because she has an invisible impairment. You can't tell that she's blind by looking at her. The story that we were told by the historians about her, that she was basically manipulated. They'd give her this money to get her drunk, and then they'd do things and bully her and make fun of her.
I wonder a lot more how people who were disabled in the past, who weren't that visible, how did you manage 200 years ago? What did you do if you were profoundly deaf? I don't imagine the opportunities to exhibit yourself were as high as if you're a conjoined twin. So what did you do? If you were only totally blind 300 years ago, what was your life like? I think your opportunities to display yourself would have been quite limited, or more limited than the people we've been looking at today.
At this time, there were prosthetic limbs available. Okay, people did actually make quite beautiful artificial legs and arms. But what I wanted to say to you was, obviously neither of these people have chosen to go for that. Presumably he would have had enough money if he'd wanted to have prosthetic limbs. We don't know about her, but she's obviously quite well dressed.
The print that stands out the most for me is the one of Sarah Hawes. They're very much showing a young woman as a medical specimen, in my view. I relate to that personally, as I've experienced medical photography as a child and a teenager, and I can relate to how negating that is.
And then you see something like that, where, you know, someone that long ago was that profoundly disabled, and yet through, you know, treatment was brought back to, we're not sure what level of function, but, you know, she's pictured standing and being able to do stuff, and she's not incontinent, and you'd got the sort of tragic medical pictures that was like, ooh, isn't that terrible? And then look what we can do for them in the case of the woman that got untwisted. But more, there was loads and loads of sort of pictures that we looked at of people saying, isn't it amazing, I've got no arms and legs, and I can write, and I can paint, and I can play drums, and it's like, yeah, great.
The fact that he drew these is secondary. It's not, look, I drew this, it's, look, I drew myself being able to do physical things, and I think that is something that disability gets sucked into time and time again. It's continually, the image of disability is based around trying to perform physical feats.
I think there's still an emphasis on looking normal, and I think the medical professions still go with that rather than socially what you as a disabled person feel comfortable with.
relationship with medical professionals and disability or disabled people totally varies on an individual basis.
If you're being in a sort of disabled hothouse kind of environment or very disability politicised environment, the medical model is regarded as evil and well superseded by the social model.
From really early on in our lives, you have this love-hate relationship. I would be dead without them, but yet at the same time I've had stuff done that went profoundly wrong.
People who are disabled should be looked at as individuals, not one massive crew.
And then I've also come across really fantastic ones who surprisingly treat you as a human being, treat you like you have an opinion, treat you like you matter, treat you like they care, and treat you like you're an individual who actually wants to be part of the conversation about your own health and your own life.
You have to be slightly careful, I think, in condemning doctors for their attitude toward disability, and in a sense doctors no more than anyone else are a product of their culture, so I think hopefully now medical attitudes towards impairment and disability are better than they were.
I believe what we've done today in these groups is look at images and explored a history that is inevitably provocative.
There have been highs and lows, I think, in the portrayal of disability, and it's very interesting to know that it isn't something of the 20th century. Do you know what I mean? The kind of, as disabled people, we tend to think, oh, we were invisible before.
Those gentlemen and ladies didn't exhibit themselves, we wouldn't know about them.
I think we still are on exhibition today. We are always being looked at as we go about our daily work and lives.
I think on a personal one-to-one level, I'm not so sure that many people's attitudes have actually changed.
And there is a hierarchy of disability. I don't care what anyone says, there is.
You're often not perceived to be disabled enough. And then of course, in the wider world, you're seen as way too symmetrical to be identifying with disability at all.
I think there's a lot of anger and aggression and impatience. People are very impatient with things they can't understand.
I think acceptance would be much more forthcoming if disabled people were less militant and thought more strategically about some of the solutions instead of leaving it to them over there. My disability is your problem. It's everybody's problem.
You know, if I was to give myself an image of what I might be as a prop, it would be a Russian doll, because I'm more than one person inside me.
We're permanently on display, whether we like or we know it or not. So there is this sort of ethos, well, if we're going to get looked at anyway, we might as well get paid for it.
My disability isn't my defining feature, and if it was, I'd be a very, very boring man, which I'm not.